So let me just start with a little story if I can, because it kind of kicked me off on building this company. About 5 or 6 years ago, my eldest daughter got to age 13, and she was aware of my concerns about privacy. She was aware I was a digital data native and actually built a bit of the internet back in the time. So she was a little bit concerned, but she came to me and said, "Daddy, can I have a Facebook account?" Now this daddy, like a lot of daddies, kind of went, oh, my little baby's going digital and I'm losing control. In fact, I know I'm losing control. I know how Facebook works. A lot of people suspect that back then. People in this room, we know this. So my initial response was, oh God, not a chance in hell. Which my wife said, being the smart one too, what's the alternative? Okay, I like good questions. And this company was about answering that question. So you have to really answer it in two ways. One is building a digital platform that's fundamentally trustworthy. And the critical component of that is, and how the hell do you make money if it's not off my data? So I have talked here previously, in fact the last couple of years, but 2 years ago I did a first talk on how to build a fundamentally trustworthy company. So it's probably worth, so I'll just put the link on there. It's actually on our homepage if you want to take a look at that. What I'm going to do today is talk much more specifically about how I built my trustworthy product and company and the business model behind that. And without going into too much detail on the product, because I'm sure you don't want a sales pitch, what I really want to go into is the thinking behind what we were doing. So, first of all, let's go back and take a really simple view about what social is all about and where digital and social should be meeting. And my view of it is, and this is not where the Facebook tool world are, but this is where I was looking at it. I said, well, actually, it's really about enhancing real-world interaction. When I was a computer programmer, I was told the computer served me. That was their job, and my job was to program it to make my life better and more efficient and more capable. So in a social context, I see that as the same thing. We've now come to this world where somehow it's gone off into this cloud virtualization thing where we've created this other utopia of where social activity happens, and to me, social activity happens in this room. It doesn't happen in the cloud. So how does digital and social really come together? And what's it really about? Well, it's about supporting the discovery of interesting people. That's why I'm here. I've met a few while I've been here. Hopefully you have too. It's about improving communications. Digital, that's what digital's about. The mobile phones in our pockets prove we're all very keen on that. I want to enhance my discovery of useful contextual information about what's going on around me and the things that I'm interested in. And ultimately, where it gets to eventually, is some level of transactional opportunity, which could be just me sharing information with you and you sharing information with me, or it could end up with me going, God, I'm so excited about what you're talking about, can I buy one of those, please? Anything in that stream. So social, economic interaction, that's the way I kind of look at it. So what's a healthy social platform? Well, I broke this into sort of three areas: the personal, the societal, and I think national was worth breaking out as well because it's becoming such a big issue today. At the personal level, it should not be about addictive design. It should be about service design. And I think that's where one of the things that's got wrong. And it should also, I believe, have a fundamentally what I would just determine as a forgetful engagement model. Because I've read some very interesting papers about how we use sometimes the term looking back with rose-tinted spectacles. Now this is actually a colloquialism term, but it's actually a reality check. We do this. If you look back to your history, you will remember all the good stuff, and you'll sort of vaguely remember the bad stuff, but generally speaking, you will have learnt a lesson from them, but you really try and forget them. Right? Because just for our own sanity, we need to move on. We need to take the lesson and move on, and not continuously be reminded about those negativities. And the trouble with the internet, and social platforms in particular, is that they're creating this problem that we're now beginning to see and understand and manifest, which is undermining, our child's sanity. Reality checks. That's what's going on. At a societal level, we have to think about, well, every society is different. The society of people in this building today is different to the society at whole that's out there. The society of people living in Helsinki is very, very different from the society of the people in London. The cultures, we've had several discussions on that already today. The cultures of different businesses, different organisations, different ways of doing business, different ways in which privacy are pursued or indeed understood are really different. And yet somehow, by shoving it all up into this thing called the cloud, what we end up doing is trying to say, well, there's only one definition, which is bullshit. So we've got to get away from this. We've got to get back to digital facilitating the development of localized societal norms. And then on a national level, these platforms have now been recognized, and some of us saw this coming, but as threats to our national sovereignty. Because we got accusations, allegedly, that Russia has been interfering in Brexit. They interfered in the American presidential elections. And in that particular case, I hope they did, because I really hope they didn't actually vote for that guy. But anyway, at least not consciously. So stepping back to the fundamental problem is that where we are today is that these social platforms, the way they've been built, they're fundamentally distrusted. Right? So we've got a very big gap. I've got a very big gap to get across, because people kind of assume that because I'm delivering a social platform that I'm out to get their data and that I'm fundamentally distrustworthy, because that's what they've been taught. That is the experience of the internet today. And the trust dilemma is sort of exemplified here. Is simply put, all I really want out of it is discovery of people information and engagement and messaging opportunity and communication capabilities. And what actually happens is all of my interests are profiled by other people, everybody I'm talking to is profiled, where I'm going, what I'm doing, who I am. All of these things are being collated by organisations for purposes that, A, I didn't even know they were doing it, and B, what they're doing it with. So this is the trust dilemma that's been going on. And it's this data collection activity and our time has allowed us to understand the extent to which this is happening and the damage that it's doing has created this trust dilemma for social platforms. There's a much bigger, much simpler perspective of this, because we all know how to build, in this room I suspect, secure platforms. But actually a social platform has a big fundamental problem, is that by definition, any data it collects, if it's going to be a successful platform, that data's got to be around not for 5 years, not for 10. It's going to be really successful. It's going to be around for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, longer than the internet has currently existed. Because that's how long we're hopefully, in our healthy society, going to live. And I can tell you for sure, and I'm sure most of you people will agree with me, that there is no way to keep that data secure for the rest of my life. And that is a pretty fundamental problem for a social platform. But the interesting thing is, since the social platforms that we use today were evolved and developed, the internet has fundamentally changed. And there's something pretty fundamental, and it's obvious that it's going on, and we talk about it many times, like the Internet of Things, for example. In as much that when the likes of Facebook and those kinds of guys came along, there was no internet as a whole in every single person's pocket. There was a limited number of people with a limited number of computers and a limited number of places, mostly universities, that actually had access to this thing called the internet and could make any value out of it. And that was the way the world was then. And so therefore the only way to derive value was to bring it up to the cloud and then utilize it up there. But the world has moved on. It's now everywhere. The internet is absolutely, completely ubiquitous now, and it's in every room and in every place that we go to. And in this room alone, there's over 150 to 200 sensors. Every single one of your phones in your pocket has about anywhere between 10 and 15 active sensors on it. Now, I've worked for my life in the real-time marketplace, firstly. I've worked in telco, I've worked in communication systems, and I've built these hard real-time systems, control systems, automotive systems, all that, and in fact some of the stuff that goes into the hypervisor technologies that go into these mobile phones. And the point is that where we are today is that the internet has become a real-time system of systems. It's everywhere, it's ubiquitous. The data, the sensors and the actuators exist everywhere. They don't have to be up in the cloud and utilise them. They're right down here and they're everywhere. So we need to start thinking about the internet as a real-time network, an active real-time network that we can utilize in a personal way, and we don't actually therefore need to keep aggregating all the data up to the cloud all of the time and storing it there, because that's a bad thing to do. We can, though, still operate on the data in real time, because it's existent in real time, in the room, right here, right now. So why don't we build our platforms in that way? Now, the nice thing is, of course, the regulatory frameworks are catching up with the way the internet has evolved, and they're doing stuff about it. But businesses have still got their mindsets up at the risk mitigation level. This regulation comes in, it's got really big fines, so now we have to do something because we want to mitigate the problem. It's still not quite getting their head around the idea that it's really about compliance assurance for the customer. And compliance assurance means adopting and understanding the principles of the GDPR and the key performance indicator. Anybody know what the key performance indicator of the GDPR is? There's only one. What's its one objective? Sorry, I did this in at an IT meeting, yes?
Improve sharing your information.
Sort of. Increasing the trustworthiness of digital engagement. Go and do the research behind the GDPR. Now, I did a talk on the GDPR to a bunch of IT people and said, how much are you spending on it? How many over 10,000 almost all put up? How many are spending over 50,000 this year? Quite a few put up. How many over 250,000? And I asked them that same question, not a single one could answer it. I said, how the hell do you know you've had a decent outcome if you don't even know why you're applying the work that you're doing to comply with the legislation? It's a crazy world. So, the opportunity for change and the way we think about how we build social. So we go beyond regulation to empower the social platform user with transparency of the data, one of the fundamental building blocks. And if you're going to make it transparent, you don't do what Facebook does and collect over 70,000 data points to profile people more accurately than anybody else has ever profiled them for the purposes of targeting them. We go the opposite direction, because the average consumer can't handle 50,000, 70,000 sets of data and understand what the hell that means. In our platform, we've got this down to 5, which makes consent pretty straightforward. You also have to think about privacy settings, and anybody who's actually built a platform fundamentally private by design will know that if you have a single privacy setting in your application, you are not private by design. Because the only thing that should be happening is setting sharing settings. In other words, my decision to take this information and facilitate a greater utilization of it. So any social platform with privacy settings is just wrong by design. It's just not doing it correctly. And it also has to have a simple, non-legal right of remedy. And we built this in before we even knew about the GDPR. But it was very, very simple, is that if that data is building social engagement opportunity, then if you lose trust in us as a platform provider, the easiest thing you can do to damage our platform is to remove the data. So we just facilitate that. And we do that incrementally, so you can just choose which of those 5 elements of data you want to remove, and away you go. And that destroys our platform because there's no value in it anymore for the interaction and engagement opportunity. Okay. So, in terms of building trustworthiness, the way we went about it was we went through, first of all, our identity minimization process, and we recognized, so I will talk a little bit about our platform here. What it basically does is that we look at the real world. Okay, 1 minute. So, very quickly then, I'll skip this slide then because there's a more important one coming up. It's about design. So is that one. And that's the one about deletion. So, monetization. It's probably the final key point to really get into. The point about monetization is that it can't be on the data. So what we've done is said, actually, social can be a service. All we have to do is find out who it is that wants a privileged level of capability in the context of that social interaction. Our platform collects crowds of people together. In crowds, there's always an organisation running an event, running a venue, or wanting to provide security, for example. And these kinds of people we can provide additional services to. We monetize the service provision without sharing any of your data, and you get a free platform for social interaction and engagement. And we think that is a fundamentally viable way of building a social platform. And where that fits into my data is that because I have no data, at some point you will want to engage transactionally with people around you, with the businesses around you, and at that point, that's where I want to connect to my data. And I don't want to do that 1,000 times. That's one of the reasons I talk on the interoperability stuff here, which I have been doing, is that I want a single interface to your data, which you then choose to bring in to the social interaction opportunity. And that, we think, is how you build fundamentally a trustworthy social platform. Thank you.